Hello, friends. Today we got my good buddy Don Gleason, a retired military personnel, 27 years in the military, 9 years in the private sector, and now he runs his own company, Achieving New Heights, where he helps individuals find their passion and find new jobs that tailor to those passions. Awesome episode, great leader, great guy. Really excited that we had him on. Everybody, if you are not liking and subscribing across all the different channels, please do that. Please check us out on YouTube. Hit the like and subscribe button on that platform. It means a lot to us. It lets us know that what we are doing has an impact on you and is helping you become a better person, achieve your goals and dreams. Share it with your friends if you think that is something that they would appreciate. And if you listen on your Spotify's of the world, go ahead and give us a 5-star review. That lets other people know and the platform know that it is making an impact. Thanks, friends. Catch up again soon. Don, good afternoon, brother.
Hey, great to be on your podcast. I appreciate the opportunity. This is a neat time.
Yeah, Don, you got a lot of memorabilia behind you.
Oh yeah.
So for those who are just listening, how about you tee it up and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm a 27-year Air Force veteran. Joined for 4 years. Never anticipated going 27, especially with as much struggle as I had through officer training school. And we might talk about that because there's a lot of lessons that I learned there. And just continued to grow and to learn, and made colonel and retired, and then went 9 years with Booz Allen Hamilton. Again, didn't think I'd stay that long. They say out of the University of Syracuse, is the Institute for Veterans and Military Families, that almost half leave their first post-military job within 12 months. I stayed 9 years, but I put a lot of work into figuring out who I wanted to work with. And now I run my own company. So Achieve New Heights, which is really a leadership development training speaking company, but it's really kind of turned more into career transition coaching. That's the audience that has really resonated. And it's a passion now to help military veterans and military spouses find that next job. And it's interesting. Now I'm getting more and more involved in leukemia, lymphoma. And we were at a committee meeting last week, and they said, just take a heart. It was a blood drop, actually. Write a statement in there. And I said, everyone deserves an opportunity to live their best life. And it doesn't matter if you're infected with cancer, blood cancer or skin cancer like I have, or other things, or you're in a job that's a dead end and you're not getting anywhere and you got a bad boss, a bad culture. Everybody deserves to lead their best life. And as Maxwell says, everyone deserves to be led well. So it all falls together when I'm thinking about what I do and things I volunteer for. Married 42 years, 3 kids, all adults in their 30s, 4 grandkids. Loving life. I have been so blessed. And we'll touch on that multiple times, I'm sure.
Well,
God has blessed me very well.
Don, if there's one thing to say, it's that you're consistent, man. 42 years of marriage, 27 years in the marriage, the military.
Yeah, that's right.
How did you decide that the military was the right step for you? I'm assuming you were a young man, because if you made it 27 years.
Yeah. Well, I was coming out of college, so I was 23, and there was no other jobs. I had 454 rejection letters.
Whoa.
From companies. And think about that. I mean, that's before personal computers, before cell phones. This was hand typed. So you were able to type the resume and get it reproduced, mass reproduction, right? But every letter was hand typed. And my wife wasn't the best typist at the time, so we probably did each one about 4 or 5 times. That's a lot of letters over months that we were sending out and getting responses back. So I had the opportunity to go back to get a master's, and I was tired of school. It's not where I wanted to go. I had several friends who did it. Great for them. Wasn't for me. So my 2 brothers enlisted in the Air Force. I said, let me see what this is about. And they talked to me, and I would get to do some environmental engineering, which was my passion. It was environmental engineering at the time.
Is that what you studied?
That's what I studied, environmental engineering.
What does that mean, environmental engineering?
So could be cleaning up wastewater, before we put it back in the stream. Could be taking water out and cleaning it before we put it in the drinking water system that you drink out of your tap. Could be cleaning up contaminated sites. Think of Love Canal in New York, right? 1960s, 70s, contamination into the groundwater and cleaning up that spill, cleaning up the groundwater so that it doesn't get into the aquifers. And a bunch of them did. So, I mean, there was just tons and tons of cases. That's where Superfund came out of. So you can talk about a lot of that. It's understanding what hazardous material you're using, how to minimize the hazardous waste. It's where to properly store or hopefully destroy, burning, incineration, or whatever, the hazardous waste so it doesn't get into the environment. It's managing all of that, soup to nuts, cradle to grave, as they like to call it, to make sure that what you and I live in, the air we breathe, the water we drink, is clean so that we, again, get to live our best life, right? Think of Flint, Michigan.
Well, I was thinking of East Palestine, Ohio, because that's not super far from me. It's like maybe, I don't know, 2 hours, but it's relatively close.
Yeah, talk a little bit about that one.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think probably everyone remembers the train, the derailment, and then I don't know exactly what the chemicals were that were in this train. And apparently, what I've learned after is that trains are the primary methodology for moving chemicals, which I guess makes sense. And I don't know if trains are safer, but I would imagine that they're at least more contained. You don't want to probably move like a dangerous chemical via a semi, and then the semi, goes off the road, or somebody hits them, they hit someone else. I can understand how that would, you shut down your highway then instead of like,
that's right.
Unfortunately, like a rural town out there in the middle of the sticks. And then the story was that they like didn't know what to do with these chemicals, so they just lit them on fire, or like, I'm sure there was planning. I mean, I was not a part of the planning committee, and Don, you probably weren't either.
No, it's not. Nope.
But they apparently burnt the chemicals off, and then residents were reporting like smelling smells, and the water was like odd and things like that. And unfortunately, the news cycle that we live in is so short that everyone was like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. And then they're like, oh my gosh, there's like a war in Ukraine. Oh my gosh, there's a war in Israel. So it's like we sort of move on, unfortunately.
Yeah, I just saw a documentary 3 or 4 months ago about the whatever anniversary it is of East Palestine, and how the efforts that the railroad and the companies have done to try to clean it up, and talking to the citizens about they're still tasting things in our water now. Is it actual, or is it psychological? I don't know. But people have done sampling, and there's still things they're trying to clean up. A lot of people had to move. So yeah, it had a big impact. And that's the kind of stuff I got into with that spill response, right? When you had, not to that extent, but if you had something that spilled on base, right? So we had fuel tanks, large diesel fuel tanks, pop a leak in them and fills up the berm. And we had to get in there and contain it, test it, clean it, get it back into vehicles, go dispose of it. I used to manage the hazardous waste facility, storage facility. So we had, all kinds of carbon tetrachloride. I can't even think of all the names. Trichloroethylene. You had fuel. I mean, it's all your solvents. We had all of those different things in different containers. In fact, one day, we had these lead acid batteries that came out of the missile sites. These are the ICBM missile sites, and they had kind of a plastic side. Well, as I was there, I had a guy was picking them up to take them to disposal. He had a forklift. He put his forklift right through the side of the lead acid battery. And I was far enough away that things were okay, but I stepped forward to try to get him to stop because he just wanted to go pick it up and take it leaking into the truck. And I'm like, no. Well, he pulls it out, slaps the tines of the forklifts in the battery acid, splashes all over my face and my clothes.
Oh, boy.
So now I'm heading to the hospital and had to get somebody else out there to finish up. You do nothing else until the replacement gets back. So had a lot of those different things.
So is that what you primarily were doing in the military?
It's where I started. I started in environmental shop, and then I worked into the readiness shop, which was being ready to deploy your organization to wherever it needed to be, right? We were civil engineers. We would set up a base camp for the Air Force to operate out of. So in my career, I got to go to Salopi, Turkey. We were setting up base camp for helping the Kurds coming out of northern Iraq to get stabilized and send them back down. And then we had people that we were getting ready to go in, U.S. Marines and others to go in and stabilize that area so the Kurds could go back. We got to go to Sursink, Iraq, set up a base camp for C-130 operations. I got to go to Baghdad, Iraq, right down in the green zone to lead the reconstruction. $12 billion, the biggest reconstruction program outside the Marshall Plan after World War II across Germany. So we were rebuilding the country of Iraq.
Well, I'm sure now that number is going to probably look like chump change in either Ukraine or in the Palestine area.
That's right.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I guess I never thought about who comes in and how do they even begin that process to go like, well, what do we need to rebuild? How do we like? I assume you like the first thing you have to do is just think like infrastructure. Like the infrastructure has been just totally wiped out. You can't do plumbing. You can't do electricity. You can't do communications. Garbage. Like where are we going to put the garbage now? I guess you don't really think about that. I just think of like businesses coming back in and trying to figure out what to do with their buildings. But it's almost probably impossible to do that without some amount of planning. Like
that's right. Oh yeah, significant.
The central planning, but you almost do sort of need that to begin that process.
That's right. We were doing so we had 6 sectors: medical for hospitals and clinics. We had oil to be able to generate income, right? So they had to get the oil infrastructure of Iraq back operating so they could produce oil and sell it to get money back in to fund operations.
Isn't that funny? That it's like the first thing you need to do is be like, we got to make some money. How are we going to do that? We need the oil back.
We had water and wastewater, especially the water, creating water plants, the distribution system, et cetera, to get water to the communities for safety. Part of it relates back to health again, right? I can't remember the number now, but the death rate of children was like 40%, something like that. It was very high.
Just because of the lack of infrastructure? They just
lack of facilities, lack of sterilization, lack of sanitation, lack of water, all of that. We had security and justice, so be able to, secure the border, secure the communities. Part of that was fire stations to be able to put out fires. We had transportation and communication, like you talked about, and we had what was the 6th one? I think buildings, health, and education. Hospitals was in that one, but we had schools, thousands of schools all around the country to be able to educate the youth. And what I loved was, go back to my statement again, everyone deserves a chance. The last slide in every presentation was a picture of kids in Iraq and a banner behind it. Basically, we're doing this for them. Everyone deserves a chance to lead their best life. That's not exactly what the word said, but that's what it meant.
So you eventually transition into the public sector and in leadership, but maybe talk to me about some of the lessons that you learned while in the military. 27 years, a lot of experiences, a lot of leading, presumably, and a lot of probably being under leaders through a heavily bureaucratic system, I would imagine. What are the things that you took away from that 27 years?
Oh man, so many lessons. Communication, clear understanding. And there was cases where I think I communicated well to my people. And there was cases I didn't. There was cases my bosses didn't communicate well with me, and some they did. And really emphasized the piece of how important that communication is. And just think of one time where my boss had made a comment and I said, I need to remember that because that's a priority for him. So when something happened and he wanted to do something else, I brought that back up. He got upset at me. And I'm like, but boss, last week you said this was really important to you. And now you seem to be going against that, and help me understand. And it got to be a very rough relationship for a year. And I thought I was going to, I got chewed out one day. One of the very few times I got chewed out in 27 years, but I got chewed out royally. And for stuff, it was, you as the commander, you take responsibility. And these are 3 things that happened that week that my squadron was working on that, of course, he was the first one to see. I didn't have a chance to do damage control. And on my birthday, he just, he lit into me. And I want to say, no, that was about my 41st birthday. And I thought I was fired because my predecessor had been fired and I came in after him and trying to clean it up. So it was a year later now, and I thought, oh, squadron's going to go through this again. But
what happens if you get fired in the military? Does that mean reassignment?
Yes. Yeah. You usually get transferred down to the headquarters, which would have been Colorado Springs, Colorado. You get put on the staff in some job, and hopefully you find a good, responsible job where you can continue to grow. But do you get promoted again is always the question.
I was just going to ask, like, what does it actually mean if you get fired from the military? Like, how bad is that? I guess you're not getting kicked out of the military.
No, I probably would have capped out at lieutenant colonel. I would have retired as a lieutenant colonel at 20, 22 years, whatever I was at. And life would have been different.
Yeah. So because I'm a little bit ignorant to this, how high up is a colonel in the military?
So they call it an 06. You're in the top 1 to 2% of officers. There's a set number of general officers in the Air Force. You can never have more than that. I don't remember what that number is. And then there's a set number of colonels. So I think in civil engineering, we might have had 20 at the time. So and then we only had 3 general officers. So for a career field of 35,000, you're in the top 20, 25. Yeah.
So
I hadn't thought about it that way before.
Talk me through the rank. You become in like what?
Second lieutenant.
Okay.
Yeah. So the enlisted rank is all different, but you come as an officer, you come in as a second lieutenant, first lieutenant, captain, major, lieutenant colonel, and then brigadier general, major general, lieutenant general, 4-star general.
Yeah, that's a lot of levels.
It's a lot of levels, 10 of them.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of people. There's what, like 500, 700,000 people that are actively enlisted at any given time?
In the Air Force right now, it's somewhere around 350 to 400,000. It's downsized quite a bit.
But that's just the Air Force. So if you factor like Army and Navy and Coast Guard, and then reserves are a whole other thing.
Yeah, without the Guard and Reserve, which is huge, you're probably at 1.3, 1.5 million between the 5 services, because you got to put the Coast Guard. Even the Coast Guard's not a military service. Coast Guard's under the Department of Transportation. When they get activated, they fall under Department of Defense. That's a whole specific situation.
So talk to me about, like, maybe this is a silly question, but how important is your rank in the military? I know clearly you take a lot of pride in it. Sounds very deserved. But like, how important is that rank in the military? And is there a certain amount of, like, I don't want to call it ass kissing or sucking up or, like, kind of playing the role, but is there a certain, like, person who goes, yeah, I don't want to be a colonel. Why? Well, because that's just not like how I operate, or something like that.
Well, there's a number of people that I knew who did not want to be a colonel, did not want to achieve that level. And that's fine. I didn't think I did either. Let me just go back. I never envisioned through college being in the military. Both my brothers were. I didn't want to play that game. And there's essentially a game, but it's a game in corporate too, right? Life is just a game.
It's true of pretty much any situation you get into, especially like you just talked about, where there's like a hierarchy or a strata. Yeah, you watch Survivor, they kind of form into groups and classes, if you will. This is a very normal human thing to do. I'm listening to this podcast about the Romans. It's like a 4-hour podcast about the Roman Empire with Lex Friedman. And he's like, they were obsessed with class. They were obsessed with your status. This was like built into the fabric of the Roman Empire, was like, where do I fit into the status? It's not anything new that we just invented.
Exactly. So to answer your question, my leadership style is much more of a collaborative, teamwork oriented, not a dictatorial. I don't like to flaunt that I'm in charge. People recognize I'm in charge because I was the lieutenant colonel when I commanded 3 squadrons. I was the colonel when I commanded a group of 7 squadrons. People knew that, and I conducted myself so that they knew, but not that I ever lorded it over people. To me, we both put our pants on the same way. We just have a different job. We came through different qualifications, degrees, certifications, desires. We have different jobs. I needed the people in my squadron as much as they needed me. together as a team, we produced fantastic results. When I first took over that squadron, it was a great squadron, and we ended up that year being number 2 in the Air Force for civil engineer squadrons in that category. Doing great stuff, and all I had to do was give them the direction, help them get the resources, and get the heck out of the way, and they would do great things. But I know a lot of leaders who felt that this was part of that one wing commander. He had to have his fingerprint on everything. He even made the question. He says, "I don't want you to repair a sidewalk without my approval." I'm like, "Boss, do you realize how many things? I got 350 people in the squadron. How many things we're doing every day?" He said, "You're going to slow down progress."
Well, that's the classic bottleneck.
Yep.
That's you flip a bottle over, it doesn't pour as fast as a cup. Why? Because the neck is slowing it down. And
That's right.
I've dealt with a lot of entrepreneurs. I talk about this all the time on the podcast because it's such an important thing for business owners to understand, is that the skills that got you from your first, $1,000 in revenue to first 10 million are so fundamentally different from the skills that'll get you from 10 million to 50 million. You essentially have to absolutely reverse everything that you're doing to get to call it 10 million, 5 million, whatever number you want to assign to this. Basically getting out of the startup phase. You have to be the maniacal owner that I am going to do everything. I'm going to take every single sales call. I'm going to schedule my own calendar. I'm going to do the delivery of the service. I'm going to write the proposals. I'm going to review the contracts. I'm going to watch the bank account. You have to pretty much do all those things because you don't have any money and nobody else is going to do it for you. But then once you get to 10 million, those are all completely the wrong things to do. And it kind of sounds like your individual that you're speaking of that had 350 people, he wanted to be in charge of everything. It's well, how does this even fundamentally work? This is the opposite of good leadership, in my opinion. And for a business, you can't move a business forward. You can only really stay at that 10 million because then that one person has to do everything. And there's no way he can do 60, 80, 90, 100, 120 hours worth of work every single week.
Exactly right. When I talk to leaders about growing, that's exactly what you talk about. You have to unlearn and relearn as you go along. And if you don't, you become the bottleneck and your organization can't grow in size, can't grow in culture, can't grow in esprit de corps because you become the bottleneck. Now, this guy just wasn't in charge. I was in charge of 350 people. The wing commander was 2 steps above me. He was in charge of, we had about 3,200 people. So can you imagine him being that, which he was that particular, wanted to know everything of every organization. And I took that lesson. So here's a lesson, right? I took that lesson when I became a group commander. And I had called the very first staff meeting I had, which was day 2, told my squadron commanders, I said, there's going to be a lot of things in your organizations that I won't know and I don't need to know. Your job is to figure out what things I need to know to help you run your squadron. But you're in that position because you can run that squadron. I don't need to manage it for you. I will not manage it for you. If I have to do that, you're out. But at the same time, you need to figure out what the wing commander needs to know. So therefore, I need to know what thing's going to get you in trouble. But the other 80, 90% of the stuff, that's you. I said, because if I know 10% of what all 7 of you know, and then the wing commander's giving me stuff, that's going to keep me busy. And I was already running 12, 15-hour days. I didn't want to get in and manage people's work. And they said that was a refreshing because the guy before me pretty much worked 7 days, 18 hours a day. He had to know everything. I was like, man, I want a life too. I want to go home and see my wife and daughter.
Well, also here's the classic thing. Right? So let's say that guy needs to know everything, right? And then someone tells him, hey, I have this issue, whatever, I don't care what it is. The door's broken on the mess hall. He comes in and he's like, I know what I need to do. I need to fix this. And whether he's physically got the tools out or he's like, okay, so we're going to call this repair person, this thing, and they're not going to do this. People get really frustrated when you come in, you think you understand the problem when you fundamentally may not.
You don't, yep.
And then you're like, I fixed it. And then you leave. People hate that.
Mhm.
And you're not going to get people to go, wow, Don's really smart. He came and he fixed all of our problems. They're gonna be like, Don is an idiot. He doesn't know what's going on. He thinks he knows what's going on, which is way worse than actually just not knowing what's going on.
That's right.
Is thinking you know, but not actually knowing. And then he leaves, and then when they speak up again, they say, hey, the door is still broken, or like, we're still having this issue. You as the leader are confused. You're like, I fixed this. And they're like, no, you didn't.
No, you didn't.
Fix it. And then they get frustrated because then they're like, anytime we tell you something, you just come in and you try to like, quote unquote, fix it. And then you leave. So for me, that's a hard lesson that I had to learn. Like, hey, they don't need you to fix it. They just need you to listen and then like just put the guardrails on them. Okay, well, what do you think you should do?
Yep.
Well, I think I should call a repair person. All right, go for it. Do it. Report back if you hit more snags.
And sometimes, and a couple of bosses did this one time. I would come up with an idea, and they knew it wasn't going to work. And they said, "Yeah, why don't you go try that? Let me know how that works for you."
Yeah.
And you'd stop for a second. It's like, does he know something I need to know? No, go try it. And I would come back, a day or a week later and say, "Yeah, that's not going to work, but I think if I do it this way, yeah, I think that would be better." And he looked at him and was like, "So you knew that?" "Yeah, but I think that was an important lesson for you to learn." Okay. I appreciate that.
That's good leadership. A lot of leaders will just be like, I cannot possibly let them fail. I cannot possibly let them get on a sales call where they just eat it and they just like do a terrible job. And it's like, hey, sometimes you got to let them. You don't give them the biggest project in the world to fail on, but you can give them a little something and be like, how did that work out? What did you learn? And it's tough to learn without making some mistakes.
That's right. I always said you need to be there to prevent the major disaster from happening, right? It's like your kids. You want to let them get out, skin their knees, bump their head, maybe go over the front of the bike. Yeah, it's going to hurt, but they're going to learn incredible lessons. And leadership is a lot like being a parent. If you do parenting right? My wife always said, our job is to help them leave the house at age 18 or 23 if they go to college, right? Depending where that happens. But too many parents they call them lawnmower parents, right? Try to clear everything out in front so the kid never has a challenge.
I've heard snowplow parent. You just push every obstacle out of the way.
Yeah, because you're in Ohio, right?
Yep. Yeah.
I grew up in Wisconsin, as you can see.
I see it. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. And so, yeah, parenting and leadership in an organization, very similar. You allow to let people develop, learn, try, innovate. If you really let them go, they can come up with ideas that are far better than you ever thought, and you'll go farther. All you have to do is be there to help them.
I love that parenting analogy. I think it's really appropriate. There's also the helicopter parent where you just kind of like are watching everything that's happening and you don't give them the freedom to actually do their job. And I noticed this, that when I sit in the room with sales reps, they do a worse job than if I just leave and I can like kind of listen like out of the corner of my ear. They'll do a much better job because for some reason they're just like tense and nervous when I'm in the room. They're like, I don't want to do anything wrong. And then I end up just like chiming in and I just become like my old self. And I'm like, oh gosh, I just can't shut up and let them take the call.
And people start looking to you and deferring to you because you're the boss in the room.
Absolutely. They're like, well, Alex has done 15 sales calls. And then before I know it, it's like, it's my client. And I'm like, I didn't want this to be my client. How did this happen?
Yep, exactly right. Yeah, sometimes you got to step out of the room. And that, just like I was trying to think of another parent analogy, but I'm not coming up with one. But sometimes you got to step out of the room, let your people work
I think they call it free range parenting now. You kind of let the kids like go run around, like you said, skin your knee. Like you don't want to let them like get into enormous danger, but you want to let them like go wrestle, go play, like go get into arguments with other kids, and like see how do you guys resolve this? These types of things.
That's right.
So that they actually can grow and develop. And I think one of the things that you hit on earlier is just aligning with them, communicating with your people. Hey, here are the things that I expect you to own. I'm reading this book. I got it somewhere over here. Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell. I'm like obsessed with it.
I've got a John Maxwell team had an interview with Dan Martell a couple weeks ago. I still got to go back and listen.
Oh, it's awesome. I'm really loving it. But One of the big things
Put
that
that on my
he
list.
talks about that I'm like, gosh, this is so obvious and apparent. Like, I don't know how I didn't see this earlier. But he's like, when you bring someone in, whether it be a hire or a promotion, or just someone on your team, you sit down with them and then you say, Don, here are the things that you have ownership over. Just kind of like you said with your people
Mhm.
you were leading. Here are the things you have ownership over. I'm going to make it clear in black and white.
Mhm.
Here are the things that I'm going to judge you on. Again, make it clear in black and white. And
Mhm.
then I'm going to check in with you every so often on these particular things, but you own it. And these are your metrics. Everybody good? Makes sense? All right, let's go. Then it just outlines very clearly, because this happens in our business. Someone will be frustrated with someone else because, like, why? Well, they didn't deliver on something. And Dan kind of goes, all right, well, did you teach them how to do that? Well, yeah, I kind of did. Well,
Kinda.
they sat in with me on the calls. They've heard me do the pitch. And it's like, okay, so like, what's the training that they have? And it's like, okay, well, there's no written training. It's like, okay, what are like, did you outline with them? Don, you own this thing. This is yours. You have ownership over like whatever it is, all customer messages. Yeah, I sort of outlined that with Don. So, okay, strike two. And
Yeah.
it's
The
like,
word sort of, oh, ouch, ooh.
yeah, right. And then it's like, did you set the KPIs or whatever it is that Don will be judged by? And it's like, well, he kind of like he knows that he needs to respond within 24 hours. And it's like, okay, kind of doesn't really sound like maybe there's a metric, but not many. So he's like, so who's the problem here? He's like, it's you. You're the problem. You didn't outline the expectations for these people in this role. And I'm just like, oh gosh. And I think in my organization, that's going to alleviate a lot of like these weird little like not arguments, but like tension that someone didn't do something that I was expecting them to do. And
That's right.
it outlines, did they or did they not actually deliver? We have
Were they responsible for that?
we have a criteria and now a standard that we're looking to hit. So we can either say either Don did it or like, hey, Don's doing what you told him to do. He may not be doing it like 10 out of 10, but he's doing it.
No, that's perfect. I'm in a discussion right now with our neighborhood association, and it's the issue of, can I park my travel trailer in the street?
Mm.
And for 3 years, they've been telling me that as long as you send us a note, we approve it. Basically, you put that letter on the dash, we will not give you a ticket, because they do not want overnight parking in the street otherwise, because the streets just aren't wide enough. But they can do it case by case. And all of a sudden, I found out a week or so ago that one of the board members does not like that. So I'm like, so I've been operating with the management association with this process. So you must have been managing that. You had a clear guidance that was okay. So now somebody's changed the rule. Where's it written? So they sent me the bylaws. The bylaws was very general, but it references back to things that were passed by the board. So I said, so give me that. I want to know exactly what was passed by the board. You discussed it. When was that? Well, it was 2014. 10 years ago, they passed it and haven't enforced it for 10 years. So is it really the rule? Or is this just a bug in somebody's bonnet? And so it's going to be an interesting conversation of how all this keeps going.
I think that is a fantastic segue into your core principle for leadership. I've asked this question to a lot of people, and it's actually been interesting, Don, because a lot of people have given me like very similar responses, which is good because then I feel like, okay, I am on the right page with these ideas. And one of them you just hit on, which is consistency. Being consistent with either your rules or your policies or your application. So if it's not okay to park the trailer in the driveway, I'm fine with that. We just got to have that for everybody and everywhere and everything. Same thing would go with rules. Like, hey, like Alex is everyone's supposed to come in at 9 a.m. If Alex starts coming in at 9:30, I'm sure this is probably true with people in the military. Like, whatever. If everyone has to do, physical training, PT, but like, well, I don't. Well, like, well, why? Well, I'm special. And it's like, okay, that's kind of a weak argument. People get very, very frustrated with that one. That's one of my core components. Before I give you my other two, I'd love to hear yours.
Yeah, I think we've already hit on a number of them. One is have a clear set of core values.
I like that.
This is how you operate. This is how you'll respect. integrity. I mean, the military has really gotten good at this. We passed in the Air Force 3 core values, easily 20, 30 years ago. Integrity, service before self, excellence in all you do. It's what we were going to stand on.
Those are good.
Everything comes back to that. Now, some services has gone to 5 or 6. Some went to 8 or 9. That's too many. When I joined Booz Allen, I think they had 11. They brought it back to 5 because 11 was way too many. You just need if they're core principles, you have a small handful. That lays the foundation, right? Because it builds the character of the people. Then I think what you made the comment of was clear expectations. This is your role. This is what I expect you to do. This is when I expect you to do it by, right? What's your boundary? What are the metrics you're going to measure under? And then you hold people accountable to that. It doesn't have to be like a helicopter parent, like you said, hanging over and beating on them. But there has to be clear time where they should have milestones. They should be progressing forward. They should be achieving their objective. I think the accountability is important. I think the training is important. The big part of the leader is making sure that the people have the training, have the resources, the money, the equipment. You can't hold somebody accountable to something that they cannot possibly achieve because they don't have the training, the money, or the resources, the tools to get it done. So that becomes your responsibility. And you have to be able to assess that and hold yourself accountable. Because your boss should be holding you accountable to that, right? And then what would be the last one of that? So some of those we've already talked about. And I think the third one is catch people doing things right.
Yeah, positivity.
Positivity. It's funny, when I was my first base as a second lieutenant, I was going around. I had the task to inventory all the above ground and below ground tanks on base. So the below ground tanks, you don't know where they're at because a lot of times they don't have standpipes, fill types anymore. They're just buried. But we have to know where they're at, because at Wordsmith Air Force Base in the lower peninsula of Michigan, out in the Four Finger area, there was a tank that had a leak in it, and they kept putting hazardous waste in it, and it got down in the groundwater. Well, they're still working that 40 years later.
Oof.
It's the gift that keeps on giving. Now, they took that tank out of there a long time ago, and they've been trying to clean up that bioremediation, et cetera, right? Using bugs to eat the chemicals.
Interesting.
All that kind of stuff. So that's a whole other area. That's part of the environmental when you asked, which is kind of unique. I was at University of Wisconsin once because my dad was a professor there, not a teaching professor, but a youth development specialist in the extension program. But he had connections across the university. So he connected me with some people, and I got to go talk to them about what they were doing on cutting edge research and bioremediation, biosparging, all kinds of stuff about just getting air to bugs in the chemicals so that they could eat it. And that's what they do. So it's really neat. But anyway, so where was I going? It's accountability.
Catching people doing, I think.
Doing people right.
Doing the right thing.
I happened to be at the communications squadron, and they routed me to the commander. So here I am, a second lieutenant, talking to a lieutenant colonel. I hadn't really done that a lot before. And somehow we got into a conversation, and we just started talking about leadership principles. And he made the comment, catch people doing things right, but it's praise in public, criticize or chastise in private. You don't belittle your people, which goes back to the core values. You don't belittle the people. Now, there is an opportunity where sometimes the butt chewing is important, but you have to do those strategically and carefully. Right? I had a situation. We were in right on the border of Iraq and Turkey, and there was an Army chief warrant officer who was sexually harassing my female master sergeant, head of my pavements and grounds area. And I had two choices: either move her out and put a male in there, or correct the situation. And they were trying to kind of let it go. And one morning I heard somebody complain about it. It only been about a week. And I said, nope, today's the day it's going to be solved. And she actually caught me as I was walking over, because it was about half a mile over to the motor pool. Please don't do this, please. I said, no. I said, it's impacting you. It's impacting your attitude. It's impacting the organization. Your people are frustrated by it. This has got to stop. It was the only time in my 27 years that I put the brim of my hat on somebody's forehead and had a one-way conversation. And I did not scream, but I was very firm. And this will not be tolerated. This is wrong. This is against your core values. It's against our core values. It's going to be solved today. I expect you to walk over right now and apologize. Well, guess what? 2 months later, before we all left, they were best friends. Everything was great, but it was accountability, solve this problem. And so I think that, but I didn't scream at him in front of all his people. It was but if anybody was watching, they saw brim of my hat on his forward. They knew kind of something was going on. So, I gave him his dignity and respect, and let him make that call to go over. If he would have not done that, then I would have had to elevate it.
I think those are fantastic core values for leadership. Mine, I don't even know if I would call them core values. It's funny. I kind of thought of this. I was getting dinner at Chipotle one night, and you get like younger people that are in the management and in the restaurant. And, it's a seasonal, temporary job for people. It's usually not their life calling, as you might indicate.
It's not meant to be. Yeah,
it's a good job. I think they actually provide great benefits. But the young man who was at the cash register, he was like trying to ring somebody out, and his manager, a female, comes over and she starts doing the slapping the hand at him, and then gave him you need to pay attention when there's 2 types of meat on the burrito. She's like, we are losing money. And it was loud. It was like loud enough that like, I'm right there. Like there's no wall between me and them. I am right there. And I just like took a step back, and she walked away, and I told him, I was like, you're doing a good job, buddy. Like, don't stress, use it as a learning lesson. But like, she probably had never really been in a management role, and she thought that's like what I'm supposed to do. And probably, unfortunately, maybe someone managed her that way at some point in time. And she thought like, this is how you manage. You like yell at someone to correct it. But I like also was thinking, I was like, this is not going to get her the desired result that she wants. Like, this person's going to resent her. He's going to communicate with her less. He's going to be less likely to want to collaborate and work with her and say, hey, Marissa, I saw you were doing that thing. Can you teach me how to do that? That's something I would learn how to do, and maybe take some responsibility off your plate. None of that is ever going to happen with that person.
That's right.
So I was thinking like my leadership principles, my top 3 aren't so much like go above and beyond. It's like just do the minimum. And if you do the minimum and you do it well, your team's going to like you. My 3 are, first, you have to build a relationship. So it's like, you got to connect with that person. Like it doesn't matter if you spend 3 hours with them every week, or if it's just like, hey, while you're walking out into the warehouse, just knowing people's names. Like, I'm sure that, for you, 350 people, that's a lot of people to try to start to understand and know. But I'm guessing you would make it an effort and a point to build a bit of a relationship. Now, what you could easily say is, well, hold on, Alex, that's a double-edged sword. Like, you can't be best friends with your people. It's not what I'm saying. It's not what I'm asking you to do. I'm just saying, like, build a relationship, prove to them that you care at least a little bit about them.
That's right.
Because then if you need to have that hard conversation, that same exact associate that's getting kind of, talked to by the manager, at least they know it's coming from a place of like love and care. And I want you to have success, not like, I think you're a POS and I think you're worthless and I'll replace you if I need you. Like, that's not going to encourage people to work harder. They're going to be like, I want to leave this job.
That's right.
So first one for me is just connect. Just connect with your people.
That's a good one.
I think I said it there previously, is consistency, just applying your rules consistently. So again, if the rule is everyone has to be there by 9 o'clock, like, I need to be there by 9 o'clock. If the rule is, hey, you get, 3 or 4 lates, like, I'm going to abide by those same rules. I'm going to take my trash. We all take our trash out on Friday. It's like, I'm going to try to do that. If the rule is you do your dishes in the sink, it's like, I want everyone to do that. But if someone's not doing it, you have to apply that rule to them. You can't say, well, no, Don's our CEO, so like it's okay if he doesn't come here at like, well, hey, if the rule's different, like, let's just be upfront about it. When can I like fit into this rule? So just being consistent with your people. I've told the story before on a podcast, but I went to a warehouse Big warehouse, big
Mhm.
facility. You know, they're probably 40, 60, $100 million company.
Mhm.
And the CEO got in at like 10:30, and he pulled his Ferrari up to his spot, which is like reserved for the CEO, which was like arm's reach to the front door. And
Mhm.
then walked in, did an hour-long meeting with me, and then was like, okay, I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to the gym. And I was just like, dude, I know you got people making minimum wage in the back. Like, I don't know how those people like have not literally revolted against
Mhm.
you.
That's right.
But it's just like that, this guy doesn't have any rules that he has to follow. Like, okay, well, can I get in at 10:30? No, absolutely not. And it's like, okay, well, how do you expect people to respect you and listen to your
Mhm.
leadership? And then the
That's
last
right.
one you talked about also additionally was just transparency. So just like having
Mhm.
a clear set of expectations for your people, being as transparent as you
Mhm.
can with your people. Not, you don't need
Mhm.
to share everyone's salary information. I think
Nope.
there's a limitation to it,
Mhm.
but I think that helps people so much. Just like let them know where they are, let them know where they stand. To your point, let them know when they're doing well. People also
Mhm.
want to know when it's not working. Like,
Mhm.
hey, tell me when I'm doing poorly. I don't
Mhm.
want this like underlying everyone in the company knows that Don always does this, but it's like, yeah, it'll hurt his feelings to tell him. It's like, what are you saying? Like, you just need to make somebody aware sometimes
Yep.
of what's going on. Those are really my big
I
three.
love them.
Yeah.
I was thinking back to that first one connection, and sometimes you have to. I'm going to say play games. You have to have some tricks because a lot of us don't remember names. They don't remember facts. Like you said, 350 people.
It's a lot.
So how I did it
I think
is
Dunbar's number is like what, 50, something like that. That's like
something like that.
the upper limit of the people you can legitimately know. You might be able to memorize more names, but
Yep.
you're not going to be intimately aware of who these people are.
Yeah. In my daytimer book, I had a complete list of all the recall rosters for all the people in the organization.
What's
So
a
it would,
recall roster? What's
so
that?
it'd be 10 or 15 sheets. Every shop would have a one page. And if we got recalled, so if we were on a night or a weekend, we were away, if you needed to, because we were on a 24-hour deployability. So at all times, we have to be able to be recalled, pack all the stuff, and be ready to get on an aircraft in
I
24
see.
hours. So you would have to, or if you had an emergency on base, right, an aircraft crash or something, you'd have to recall people to be able to do those jobs on off hours. So I had everybody's recall roster. And when I was walking the shop, I would I would look at it and the name to the leader. If I was out at an event like a picnic or a Airman Leadership School graduation or award ceremony, and I would meet spouses, I would connect them to the military member. I don't want to say man, majority are men, but
Right.
right now it's much more diverse. So you connect them to the military member, and I'd write their name down, and I might even write 3 kids. And if they
Mm,
kids were in a sport, I might write that down. Now I did it in pen on the sheet of paper. It would have been easier to go on a spreadsheet and have it, but then I would forget it in the computer.
mm.
So every month because we had to, the first of the month had the recall roster had to be updated because you'd have new people, et cetera, join, leave, et cetera. And I would have to handwrite those notes, lock that stuff right in here.
Mm.
So now when I would go to an event, I'd see Senior Master Sergeant this was a real case, Senior Master Sergeant so-and-so's come over with his wife. And I said, hey, Sergeant, how are you doing? Hey, Linda, how are you doing tonight? Hey, last time we
Mm.
talked, your son was going through getting on the football team. How's he doing? And she would just look at me like, how do you remember this stuff? And I finally told her,
Mm.
I said, I cheat. I put it on my recall roster. I go through it
Mm.
every month. And she says, well, even though you're cheating, that's a great method because you're using a tool to help you to show you care. The fact that you're doing that shows you care.
That's exactly what I was going to
Yeah.
say. And it's interesting, Don, because the bigger the organization gets,
Mhm.
the more something like that will matter to people, right? Because if they
Mhm.
go, he has a lot of people that he has to manage. My friend works at a hospital, and I don't know, it's probably 300 plus people at the hospital.
Mhm.
But the CEO will like walk around the floor and say hi to people, and generally like knows everyone's names.
Mhm.
And like my friend damn near cried because he said like, "Hey, I know what you're doing, and I really appreciate it." It was like that. That's what she said. He
Mhm.
said to her, and she was like, I like almost broke down in tears because I'm working so hard and I feel like underappreciated. But the CEO just like came and said that to me
Mhm.
out of the blue, like on a Tuesday morning.
Yep.
So as a leader, like to your point, like you put in a lot of effort, but You don't have to put in probably that much effort to make an enormous impact. And that little thing, just like a little bit of that, it's funny because it can change the way people fundamentally think about the
Oh, yeah.
decisions that you make. Like, I always use this example, like when people get hired, I say, like, like, give us a little bit of grace. We're going to buy you a t-shirt, twice a year. If you asked for a large and I accidentally got you an extra large, I didn't do it on purpose because I hate you and I spite you and I think that you're fat. Like, it was an accident.
Yeah.
Like, so you can either view it that way, or you could view it as like, this is so cool. They buy us like a free shirt twice a year. Like, no other company that I've ever worked at has
Yeah.
done that. So just like that little frame. And sometimes all it might be is that, hey, the CEO I know really cares about me. So like, they made this decision, but they made it with the intention to give us like something. And maybe it was a hard decision. Like, maybe it's not perfect for me, but I know they care.
Yeah, but that what you just did was so important. Ask a question, express something. So I was talking to a master sergeant one night. He's in my so I was a squadron commander. So in my operations area, doing all the maintenance and repair of the facilities and utilities around the base, there was this master sergeant filling in from one of the shops for the senior master sergeant. Senior master sergeant was on leave, and master sergeant and I were talking, and I had got to know him a little bit. And he asked me a question. I just said the simple thing, I can't tell you that. All I meant was, I don't know the answer to that. He took it as, oh, it's classified or sensitive. And we could have walked away from each other and we wouldn't have got anywhere. But he had the gumption enough, the courage enough to say, oh, I didn't know it was classified. What can you tell me? And I said, oh, wait, time out. It's not classified. It's not sensitive. It's really just, I don't know the answer to that. So I'm going to go away, and tomorrow I will find the answer to that. And tomorrow night at this time, I'll come back around. Will you be here? He goes, yes. I said, I will purposely be back here at 5:00 and I will answer that question for you. If I can get it to you earlier, great. And he's like, wow. He says, you can take a couple of days. I said, no, I want to get it done quickly because sound like you need to answer. So I held myself accountable. But the point being, he had the courage to ask the question. And if I'm in the situation where I hear something that I don't quite understand, I need to have the courage to ask the question. If it's to my boss, to a peer, to my subordinate, right? It goes back to what I said in the very beginning, communication. And you can't be afraid. I know so many people. I'm a consultant in the DISC personality assessment, not just a trainer, but a consultant. So I can apply it. And so many people who are S personalities, which is 67% of the population in some way, they resist conflict. And asking that question, putting potentially the boss on the spot or a peer on the spot, they feel is conflict, right? Giving somebody feedback of their performance, which we talked about, is so important. People want it, but we're afraid to give it. You have to do it. So we have to figure out ways to get over that. Part of my coaching is helping people see the importance of that and stepping up and doing it. Once you start doing it, you start realizing it's not so scary. But the first couple of times, it's scary because you got in your mind, oh, they're going to get upset. They're going to blow up. It's going to be the postal thing with a shotgun. I'm going to get killed. They can spin all kinds of stories in their head. And it's really just the person wants some feedback on how they're doing. Yeah.
I love that, Don. To transition, talk to me a little bit about what you're doing now. You're helping people. Can you tell me the phrase again? Find your passion.
It's find your passion. It's everyone deserves the opportunity to live their best life. That's a big piece of it. And for my specifically career transition, it's helping people find the job that energizes them, so they can have the life that fulfills them. And I say it that way because energy, people talk about passion or mission or purpose, and people argue about those all the time. But the bottom result of that, when you're in whatever that position is, you're energized. You want to go to work. You don't have the Sunday scaries, right? Monday's not this, oh man, it's Monday. It's Monday. I get to go in and do my job. I love it. I love the people I'm with. I'm loving the job that I'm with. And I love the challenges I get to take on. I mean, when I went to Baghdad, I remember First, I got in on a Sunday. I was transitioning for 48 hours with who I was replacing. He'd left, went back to home to the States. He had to actually retire from the military.
Mm.
On Friday, I had to do a briefing of the program to the Defense Contract Audit Agency because they wanted to come in and audit the program. I had to get smart quick. And then that night, we flew out to Fallujah, which was a hotbed, and met with a bunch of Iraqi contractors Saturday and Sunday. I come back Sunday afternoon, and all I wanted to do was go take a shower, hit the gym, take a shower, maybe get to bed, and I'd hit Monday. And then I got the word from my co-deputy, the 3-star equivalent. He's a civilian. 3-star equivalent wants you in this meeting at 4 o'clock. Oh, man. Well, he had this huge task, right? It was, I've been here 3 weeks longer than you. I have to benchmark this program. I have to, in 12 days or something like that, I have to go brief the Secretary of the Army and Congress on the program. So I need to know, are we spending the money in the right way? Are there things we can do to change things around to save money so we get more hospitals, more clinics, more schools, more communication, more transportation, whatever, more things done for the Iraqi people? So I grabbed, he gave me a team of people. Everybody around the table had to give me representatives. We, within 5 days, came up with a strategy, briefed it to him. Some people didn't like it, but it was the right thing. I felt it was the right thing. My team felt it was the right thing. We briefed it to the 3-star. I let the other leaders voice their concerns with it. The 3-star made the decision to say yes or no. And then he went off, and we gave him all the slides and all the material, etc. So he's memorizing it on the way back. And he briefs Congress, and the next day it's on the front page of the Washington Post, the New York Times, the Stars and Stripes. And it's like, that was a 5-day effort. We saved $1.5 billion out of $12.8 billion.
It's pretty good savings.
Making some changes, right? But it was for the American people, right? Because we're spending our tax money over there, and we were wasting it. And we made some changes in the operations to fix it. But it was fun, right?
Right. That was something that actually excited you.
We were bashing heads, and not bashing literally, but we were having conflicts with people because some people, it was their rice bowl and they didn't want to give up their rice bowl. Things had been doing it this way for a while, about a year. They didn't want to change it. And no, now's the best time to change it. So, but you had to be excited. So I'm sorry for the sidetrack there. But
no, to your point, I actually had someone on the podcast named Max Hunter, who's a chief happiness officer.
Oh, yeah.
And his whole company is essentially dedicated to that mission, very similar mission. You guys might like to connect. That what he does is he comes into companies and attempts to help them give their employees that feeling that they're excited about Monday morning.
Yeah.
He's like, that is what we do. And he indicated some of the statistics around like happier companies have better success. And just maybe a podcast or two ago, I cited there's a fund out there, like literally a venture capital fund that invests in brands and businesses that have high happiness scores. And they're like outperforming the market. I'm sure I could find it.
Yeah.
But it's fascinating because clearly like happy employees create better companies. And I think that's cool that you guys both have sort of settled on a very similar idea out there.
Yeah, there were some studies done that, because, go back to COVID, at the end of the first year, 4.3 million people were changing jobs every month. They did a survey about a year later, and 70% of them wish they had not changed. And even going into 23 and into 24, I think the number was 63% want to change jobs this year. They're not happy.
Wow.
And they put an economic number on that of the lost productivity based upon people who are not happy, not engaged, slow rolling things. It was $1 trillion across the U.S. I think it was.
Of unhappiness in the workforce.
The economic impact. So now if you could turn that around like he did, right? Make them happy, make them excited. Think about the impact of the GDP, gross domestic product.
Well, to your point, a lot of people maybe aren't even in the wrong job, or wrong location or workplace. It's just what they're working on doesn't necessarily excite them. Part of that is also management. Like I know a big part of it is that the manager won't give you the bandwidth and leeway to actually go out and accomplish things. So you're like, well, I'm not getting anything done here because every time I start, Don jumps in and tries to fix it for me. And I don't have ownership over this thing. I can't see this project come to fruition.
Yeah. I put it in 3 categories: the right role, the right leader, the right culture. Right? What I'm doing, everything you just talked about, who I'm doing it for, what their leadership style is, are they getting me the resources, are they micromanaging, and the right culture. Do we have values and ethics that match? One thing I loved about Booz Allen, they're very strong on the integrity piece. And they had made a policy that if we ever get information from another contractor or government that we are not supposed to have, so source selection sensitive information or bid rates on other contractors, we will immediately inform the government. Now, when we did that, the government would get kind of ticked because now it's extra work for them, right? But they understood it was the right thing to do. We had a relationship with them, but yeah, they got a little upset about it, just because now they had extra work. But we had one instance where I think it was an Air Force medical guy, lieutenant colonel, came into the organization, had just come out of doing a source selection in the government that wasn't done. He brought that information with and he shared it. And we didn't identify it and we didn't report it. And we got suspended. And it was interesting as I was talking to some lawyers and they said, 95% of companies would never report what you guys do. And here you are getting your hand slapped for acting the way that most people do. But it's not your culture. Your culture is reported. So yes, they're now holding you accountable to it. But we never challenged the government about why you're suspending us. It was, how do we fix it? Who do we hold accountable? We had to let some people go. We had to reprimand some people, right? But
so when you say follow your passion, tell me what that means, right? Because I'm passionate about a lot of things. Sometimes I'm passionate about watching football and smoking a cigar. That's what I did on Sunday. That's what I want to do this Sunday.
Yeah.
How far should people attempt to take that? Like, help people understand where a career and a passion can blend. There's this article that I've got from Scott Galloway that I really love.
I'd love if you'd share it with me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I can read you some snippets right here. It's called The Algebra of Wealth. You ready? Don't follow your passion, follow your talent. So building wealth is a product of many small decisions, but also some big ones. Some of the most important choices you make will be about your career, what field to pursue, what companies to work for. I look at it from several angles in this article. Most important advice that I can offer is don't follow your passion, follow your talent. Sustained, rewarding passion is something you build, like wealth, by applying hard work to your talents. Unlike passion, talent is observable and testable. It can be more readily converted into high-earning careers. And if it's better the more you exploit it. Your mission is to find something that you're good at and apply the thousands of hours of grit and sacrifice necessary to become great at it. As you get there, the feeling of growth and your increasing mastery of your craft, along with economic rewards, will make you passionate about whatever, quote, it is. Follow your talent, your passion will follow. So his equation is talent plus focus creates mastery, which creates passion. So essentially what he's saying is like, you may not, and this is, I've heard him talk about it at longer lengths. Like you may not love this thing at first. Like you may not have loved environmental engineering on day one. You might have been like, I don't know, it's okay. But as you got better at it and learned more at it and became one of the top people in your field, then it's like, I'm passionate about this and it excites me. Plus it's also a marketable skill, right?
Yeah. So this is why I was saying that a lot of people debate, is it passion? Is it purpose? Is it talent? What is it that you follow?
Earning ability, right?
Yeah, earning ability. And I think it's a number of those things. I don't know that there's any one or two that I would put my hat on.
So you have to factor more than just, I love this thing, I'm going to go all in.
Yeah. To me, the skills or the talent are important. I think the interest. You may have really good skills in a certain area, but you don't have an interest in applying it in that field.
It's going to be hard to continue to get better if you don't like the thing.
Right.
Like if you hate playing the piano, even if I am more naturally talented, Don's going to eventually become better because he freaking loves playing the piano, dude. He
That's
wakes
right.
up dreaming about it. Like, I can't wait until I get off work to go play the piano. Whereas I'm like, oh, I don't want to do that.
That's right. You may be really good at it, but you don't enjoy it. Think about who's the most recent male, well, even Katie Ledecky,
Yeah.
right? She's really good at it,
Mhm.
but she has a passion for it. She can spend 8 to 10 hours a day in the pool, and then the rest is in the weight room
Mm.
because she sees that vision. And I think there's a vision piece to this, right? Like me, it was, I want to clean America's waters. Everything I talked about in the beginning was, I want to clean wastewater before it goes in the stream. I want to make sure that any contaminated sites are cleaned up so they don't get into the groundwater, into the stream, right? I want to protect the wildlife. I want to protect, the animals, the fish. I want to be able to go swim in that water.
Mm.
So it's having that kind of vision for me. And I think the one thing that I always tie in lately a lot is because it's emotional. We make decisions on emotions, not always on logic. We justify them with logic. The car we buy, right? There's a piece of that of it just feels good. I think I look good in it, right? I want this car. Oh, and by the way, it gets 25 miles a gallon and.
Yeah, yeah. You reverse, decide why it's a great
That's right.
like a great purchase.
Yeah. So I tie the experiences in. So a quick example. I was working with a lieutenant colonel, Air Force meteorology guy, was a prior enlisted. So I can't remember what he came out of prior enlisted in the enlisted corps, but he became a meteorologist. I said, so what do you want to do? And he goes, this is shortening it way down to hour-long conversation, down to 20, 30 seconds. He goes, I know I do not want to be the meteorologist on a TV show at 6 o'clock every night talking to the maps about the cold front and the warm front and percent. I don't want to, percent of rain. I do not want to do that. So, okay, so tell me a little bit about the job that you had in the military. We walked through some things. I said, what was the best thing that really excited you? He goes, easy. I got to be the meteorologist for General Henry, who was the 3-star general in charge of the oil spill horizon disaster cleanup throughout the Gulf. And he would challenge me in different ways to use meteorology to predict where the oil was going, how the water would turn over, maybe where that oil spill was down 100 feet, which they found. He would challenge me to put all of this stuff. And he says, I loved it. I could do that all day, every day for months because I'm using my craft to a purpose, not just purpose he cared about. So guess what? He's now at GS-14, working out of San Antonio, but his job is really in DC, but he's remote 3 out of 4 weeks here in San Antonio. And he's working with the Department of Homeland Security, helping FEMA using his meteorology, doing exactly that, going through hurricanes, tornadoes, all these different things, and helping the cleanup, helping warnings, all of that thing related to it. But he's not the guy on TV. So talent, skills, interests, passion, experience. I can give you a whole handful of those. I'll stop there, but that was one of the ones I loved the most.
Also, it's a marketable skill.
Mm-hmm.
This is kind of one of the things that I've also heard Scott Galloway talk about is you're better suited to be in a field where being in the top 10% instantly makes you very successful, as opposed to a field where you virtually, if you're in the top 10%, that doesn't necessarily mean you're successful. So like acting would be a good example.
Yeah.
One of the statistics I think he gives is like there's I don't know 500,000 actors in the Screen Actors Guild, but something like only 5% of them qualify for healthcare because they make over $30,000 a year acting. So he's like, so essentially like being in the top 10% in this field is not like good enough. You have to be in like the top 1% of the 1%. Whereas if you just became a CPA, like being in the top 1% of CPAs means that you're like flying private. So it's sort of an interesting thing there also kind of thinking about that market.
Yeah. That's where you got to do the research on what is the earning capability, because you got to factor in what is the amount of money, the lifestyle that you want, what's the amount of money to get you there. Right. So you can't go off and be, as Dave Ramsey always talks about, master's degree in left-handed puppetry. Just aren't many of those. And it's probably teaching and you don't make that money. So you're probably not going to have the lifestyle you want. You may love it. But that's another, so there was another case was talking to a Army sergeant major, and we were going through the conversation, and I said, so why did you join the Army? He says, well, that was easy. I came out of, I think it was Alabama, and all of my friends and my brother's friends were all either dead or in jail or unemployed alcoholics. I didn't want it, and my mom definitely didn't want that for me. So she pointed me in the direction of the Army to get the heck out of that area. So we walked through some stuff. So what are you thinking about doing? He goes, I don't know. I said, so what kind of experience in the Army was the most exciting for you? Really lit you up? Because that was easy. I got to be the point man for the USA Olympic basketball dream team. This was the Michael Jordan, Charles Barkley, David Robinson. When they came back with the gold medals, they met with the kids in DC, the inner city kids that single parents, poverty, etc. And he said it lit the kids up when each of them were talking about where they came from. And a number of them came out of the projects, out of poor, single parents. And the kids were saying, if they can do it, I can do it. It gave them hope. Now, he didn't take that into a job for his occupation. He took it into volunteering. So he's now a project manager with a large corporation to fund his economic needs, because working with kids is not going to, especially nonprofits, is not going to be a highly profitable task, right?
Can be tough.
But he can volunteer in that area, satisfy that need, but make his living being a project manager. So the thing you love, the experience, may not be your occupation, but you still have it in your life to be able to make life exciting. Now, you can't go do a project management job that you just suck. Don't have the talent, don't have the passion, don't have the interest. You can't do that. He did like that, but he was debating between the two.
Well, I had someone on my podcast recently, David K. Richards, who he helps start charter schools.
There you go.
In various different areas. He has like a charter school that's essentially like a franchise. It's super interesting model. I didn't know anything about charter schools. I still hardly do now, but yeah, so he's spreading his schools all over the country into the various states where it's available. So that's just an example like that. That would probably be and I think he can do very well for himself in that. He doesn't necessarily need to make it a side project. I think it's his full-time gig.
Yeah, David Robinson, came out of the Naval Academy, went to the San Antonio Spurs. Now he's multi-millionaire, right? Part owner of the Spurs. But his whole interest now is starting charter schools in San Antonio. And he's got 22. I think he's going to 30. I happened to, about a year and a half, run into him at the gas station. And I saw him over there. He's filling up his Lexus, and I'm like,
hard to recognize him.
That's right. Now, I'm 6'4.5", so he's 7'2". So, jeez. But I'm looking at him thinking, if I go over and say hi and try to get a picture, how do I start this?
Yeah.
And I just read an article about his schools, and I said, so I finished my fill up. I walked over, and I could see him look at me. He's like, "Oh shit!"
Here it goes. Yep, there's another fan.
I said, David, it's great to meet you. I'm really excited by what you're doing with the schools. How is that going? I read an article that you're at 22 and you're going to 30. He goes, and he just lit up and he started talking about it and the kids. And we talked for 3 or 4 minutes. And I didn't even take the picture. I just said, hey, I just want to say thanks. Thanks for being the leader with the Spurs. Thanks for being a leader in the community. And I appreciate what you're doing.
That's
and
great.
We said goodbye. Story. But it was about what interested him.
Talk to me about, what do you think most people are doing wrong with a job search?
Well, 2 things. One thing is what we just talked about. They don't figure out what they really want to do.
Spray out their resume to, a project manager. Oh, sales. Ooh, inside rep.
I say it this way, right? They look at the newspaper in my old day, right? Now it's the internet or job postings, and say, can I do that job versus do I want to do that job? I could do a whole lot. In fact, my buddies always kept telling me when I was getting out of college, hey, there's all these engineering degrees. And I would look at the paper like mechanical, electrical, nuclear. That's not mine.
Yeah.
It's not, but could I have done it? Probably. Did I want to do it? No. So I think one is you got to figure out what it is you want to do, because that determines who you network with, what kind of companies, what people, et cetera. But here's the second big one. And that's what I'm working right now is, you've got to separate in your resume and your LinkedIn. You have to separate yourself from the people pile. 95% of the resumes look identical. They
I
don't.
can say that from a person who managed HR at my
Yeah.
company for a really long time.
Yep. People aren't writing them in the right way. They're not telling a story. I'm building I call it the storytelling framework for job hunting. It's like a book or a movie. You have to, in your resume, talk about the things you did just like a book or a movie. There's got to be
Mm,
this was the problem in terms that the company kind of says, hey, that was significant.
mm,
And then talk a little bit about how you solved it. So you see them as a problem solver. And third is the results. Too often, what I see, in fact, I'll give you an example. Talking to a Navy E7. So it's a kind of master chief, I think, maybe enlisted. So he comes on this ship, and his bullet was responsible for $1 million of plant and equipment on this ship. Doesn't really say anything. It's a responsibility bullet. I
right,
was responsible for.
right.
So we started talking about it. Tell me what happened. Tell me the challenge. He goes, well, the reason I got brought on board was because every forklift was inoperable. 22 of them.
Mm,
Who? I said, what was the cause? What was the ramification of that? And he goes, 75 people, 6 hours a day, hand carrying supplies around the ship,
mm,
not being able to do their job. So now they had to go on top of that, do 8 hours doing their job, right? So they're working 14, 15-hour days. Morale is down. Captain's pissed. I said, so what'd you do? He says, well, I started to research the forklifts. They were all out of manufacture. So I couldn't find a manual straight away. So I had to call certain people that I had connections to and find, it's kind of like private eye, right? Just leading,
mm-hmm.
you get leads like a criminal investigation. You get leads until you can find the answer. He found somebody who had the manual. They faxed it to him as they were out at sea. He goes through it. He figures out what needs to be done, what parts I need, different on every forklift. And guess what? They don't make those parts. So now he had to go find somebody who could talk suitable subparts, get those shipped out. And he got them out to the ship. And he had to actually have the captain reroute the ship to be able to get the supplies. And I said, how long did that take? He said, 2 weeks. Had them all fixed.
Mm,
It's like, holy moly. That's a powerful bullet, right? Facing 20, and that is not the exact words, but facing all 22 forklifts inoperable, causing, what did I say, 75 people 6 hours a day at this cost. Found the manuals and the parts for forklifts that were out of manufacture, fixed in 2 weeks. Saving that amount of money. I'd put that at the end. But now that's a story that somebody who's operating a ship, a warehouse, facilities, you see that guy being able to do that kind of stuff and he loves it. That's the guy I want on my team.
mm,
The responsible for $1 million doesn't excite me.
mm.
It just tells me, okay, you got hired into a job and that was your job. So
Yeah,
it's about that story we have to tell.
his resume would probably be better suited to just specifically and only tell that story. Because to
You
your
could probably
point,
break it down. Yeah.
to your point, when I was reviewing resumes, if my job posting goes well, I'll have maybe up to 100 different resumes.
Or
And
more.
you got to remember, more. We're a small company. Like I can't imagine if you're like Google and you're trying to sort through like 10,000 resumes.
Mm-hmm.
How do you even begin to do that? But the reality is that the person who is sorting that resume is going to look at that resume for an extremely short amount of time.
Mm-hmm. 6 to 8
And
seconds, they say.
yeah, first, I'll just put it out there. Like you have to try a little bit. Like a lot of people who apply for our jobs, like and some of them are like lower entry level, if you would call them that, and they just don't even try. They have like the ZipRecruiter like automatic resume that's like 3 lines, like McDonald's, this place. It's like, okay, well, obviously you're not going to get the job. You didn't even try. You put absolutely no effort in. You're gonna get a job that is equivalent to the amount of effort that you put in, which is not going to be a great job.
That's right.
So you got to try at least a little bit. But then secondarily, you just got to have that resume pop a little bit. And I think one of the things that I see you talk about a lot is customizing that resume to the actual job. Because a lot of people will use the same resume over and over again.
Over and over.
And sometimes there's someone who's really qualified, but I'm like, this skill doesn't really transfer to my job at all. Like I'll be looking for someone in HR and they'll have done like really successful project management. But I'm like, that doesn't really have anything to do with what I am looking for. they could try to transition that verbiage wise to my job, but they just don't.
I had a gentleman one time. I loved his resume. We got along great on an interview, but I said, "Here's the job I'm looking for you to fill. Tell me a little bit about that experience," because it really wasn't clear on his resume. He had a lot of great experience. Lieutenant Colonel, 20 years. I know his background. Tell me a little bit about this. I need somebody in the programming area of projects to be able to get money, to be able to articulate it in the right way. And his answer was, "Sir, you hire me and I will figure that job out and I will do whatever you need me to do." Yeah, I can't train you on the job, right? You got to have some basis that you're starting at.
Even if you're like, you're working your way around how my past skills are applicable, you got to at least try, right?
That's right. He had not looked at what the job was. He hadn't asked me any questions. He wasn't even able to fake it, because I bet he had something in his background that he could have answered that question. But he just flew in trying to do it. What do you call it? Off the cuff.
Yeah.
And I couldn't hire. I could not do it, even though I know he would probably do a great job.
Yeah.
I couldn't justify it.
Also, while on the topic of interviews, I have so many people that come in and they just won't say like anything about themselves. They'll be very quiet, very like shelled up. And I get it, you're nervous if you're in an interview, but at least have some like pre-memorized talking points. Like, tell me about yourself, Don. Like if you go, yeah, I don't know, like I'm pretty normal. Like I like to play video games. I like to work in the warehouse. It's like, you got to give me more than that, Don. Like you don't need to be the most articulate. This is not running for president. Like you just need to be able to give me a little bit more than that, Don. You need to be able to talk for like 60 to 90 seconds at a time. I get that all the time, unfortunately. And it's like, I don't know if I like you or hate you. You just didn't give me anything. But if it's not like a heck yeah, like it unfortunately probably has to be a heck no.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to be ready. It's kind of like networking, right? Don't go to a networking event until you have an elevator pitch.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Right? 30, 45 seconds. And some people say they got to put their entire resume in a 30-second elevator pitch. And I've had people, I've known people who trained those folks to try to regurgitate their entire resume in 30 seconds at like 90 miles an hour, 150 miles an hour. And you don't understand it. You don't know why they're going that way. I do something like, I haven't done this for a while, so I'm going to come do it off the cuff, but I've memorized this one. I just haven't said it in a couple of weeks. I won't even say my name up front, right? I'm that guy who loves the environment. My dad took me fishing when I was a kid, and we'd get on the river and I would see the pollution. I would see the yellow foam and I'd see the dead fish and I could smell the stench. And I decided right then I wanted to be somebody who cleaned that up. And the first Earth Day of May 1970, I was in the 5th grade. And those two things came together that drove me, because I was really good at math and science, to get my environmental engineer degree. And I got to do that in the Air Force. And I won several major command environmental awards, made a name for myself. I know you and your company work in the environmental field. I would love to talk to you about that opportunity. Are you the right person? What do you think?
I love it. I'm ready to vote for you for vice president. President, those are occupied right now. But no,
finally,
I mean,
finally get one of the top candidates.
Yeah, we'll get something new, get something fresh. I'm the same way. I have like that I kind of introed you to myself when we got on this call. Just like own and operate company called Mix Solutions. We help brands utilize the Amazon platform. Just went over $150 million in total lifetime sales, and this year is actually 10 years in business for us. Like that gives you like who is this person? And that's not that hard to get down.
That's right.
It's a lot harder when they start asking the hard hitting questions, but even then you can prepare yourself somewhat. So, and last time I'll reference the presidential election or candidates, but if you watch the debate, both of them just whatever question was asked, they pretty much just said whatever they wanted. And they go, well, the important thing for me is about the American people. And you're like, I was asking you about taxes, and you're just like going to like, my agenda, which is, it's fine. But at least be able to do that if you don't have a great answer.
Yeah. Yep. It started, I was worried about Harris because it started exactly that way. They asked about the economy and she went off in a whole different
Yeah,
direction.
yeah.
And I was just like,
Hey,
what? And
hey.
then Trump followed the same way. So it
Yeah,
was like,
yeah.
it was,
Yeah,
yeah,
but which is, very political in
it
nature.
is.
But
Yep.
if you don't
Talking
have
points.
I get it. If you don't have a good answer to their question, like, tell me a time when you overcame a difficult problem. You're like, I can't
Mhm.
really think of anything. And you go, well, really, I think part of the issue is communication with your leadership team. And they go, oh yeah, okay, okay. And it's
Yeah.
just like,
Yeah.
but
Because what's the number one issue right now? We're gonna drill in, I guess, a little bit. What's the number one issue now is people felt they were economically better with Trump than Biden.
mm,
So being able to have, I read an article last night looking at several facts that both supported Trump was better and both supported Biden was better. So
mm,
depending on what facts and figures you pull out, you,
absolutely.
you can talk about it, right? Because you can pick the grocery or the fuel or whatever prices that have increased. You can pick the ones that haven't. And you can find that piece that supports your position.
Mm,
But you have to do some research and you have to be able to articulate it. And they didn't.
yeah.
They
That's
just,
that's the classic, like, if you ever go to a trial, both sides have an
yeah.
expert witness. They're both experts, but they're both diametrically opposed to the conclusion they come to.
That's right. That's right.
Well, Don, do you have any other, leadership lessons or things out there for people that you think it's important for them to consider that maybe we didn't hit on today?
Um, I'm going to go back to that overarching piece, right? Everybody deserves a chance to live their best life, whatever that means to you.
Mhm.
Maybe it's having the cigar watching football with a brandy or whatever on Sunday afternoon. Maybe everything else supports that. It doesn't matter. It's the life that you want to live. You got to define it. But too many people are in jobs with role, leader, or culture that doesn't match, and they feel locked in. They're going through the problem. I'm working with a guy in Houston. He just won't listen. He says he's been networking with people, but nobody will help him. Like, you're networking with people that I know. They would love to help you.
Mm.
How are you articulating that? And I take it back to when he and I were working together. He was all over the place. He couldn't settle in on what he was looking for. And when I gave him ideas, because this is what I thought he needed, he wouldn't do anything with it. So yeah, he's frustrated with me, but it kind of comes back to him. If 10 people won't help you, who's the common element, right? Probably him.
Mm.
So anyway, I still just have a passion to try to help him. So I'm trying to talk to him and get him to over the hump
Well, also,
because he deserves a chance.
to that point, nobody owes you a life where you are able to live out your passions. Like, that's on you.
Mhm.
You have to go
Mhm.
and do something to get that. So
That's
you
right.
can say, "Oh, life is so unfair. I work this crap job," but it's like, hey, you you
Mhm.
you applied for that job and
Mhm.
took that job, or you got referred and went to the interview and you took that job.
Mhm.
So like, if you want to change, like, it's on you.
That's right.
And yeah,
Mhm.
just taking a little bit of ownership of your life, and that's
Yeah.
difficult. I get that. But
Mhm.
if you want that beautiful outcome, you got or might have to go
Mhm.
through some difficult times in getting there. It sounds like your friend's going through it, and he'll
Yeah.
probably get there, but
Yep.
he's at least on the right track because he cares enough to attempt it.
That's right. So I think find that interest thing, pursue it. Maybe you take a job that's a stepping stone, but have that vision, like we were talking of. This is what I really want to do. I had that vision to clean America's waters. What did that mean? You asked me, and I was able to articulate it, right? So I had to go through some steps to get there. The most exciting day when I was at Booz Allen was working with the Air Force Civil Engineer Center, and we did a 4-hour, 6-hour brainstorming session of how to set up a brand new program and what the metrics were going to be and responsibilities and organization, how we are going to communicate to the major commands. And we worked all of that. And I walked away as like, that was so much fun because we got a great result. It was in an area I cared about. I love facilitating groups, right? So you got to figure out what that is. And then I think figure that out what you want to do outside of work, hobbies, volunteering. We all, how do you say this right? We have a responsibility. Those who have much should give much. I'm not just talking money, time, talents, right? Go volunteer at the food kitchen or the food bank or Red Cross. I was the board chair for the Red Cross in San Antonio. Go volunteer there. There's so much need. You can just go on and on and on with all the nonprofits that need support, need help. And so, but it's got to be, again, in something that you're willing to do. Because if you deploy down to Panama City, Florida, right after Hurricane Michael, and there ain't nothing there, restaurants are destroyed, there's no water, people have all evacuated, and you're there trying to support the first responders, and you're living in tough conditions, you better be passionate about it.
I love it, Don. Where can people catch up with you and find the other things that you're doing? And I know you're very, very public on LinkedIn too.
I am. I try posting every day on my personal page and my Achieve New Heights business page, and trying to make those different, not just copies of each other. Because the Achieve New Heights is really my career transition leadership focus, and then I'm trying to use the personal page for people to get to know me, especially on Facebook. I do the same thing. I post more on Facebook of my travels, my bird watching, I walked by something and was like, hey, isn't that an interesting thought? Trying to get people to think about things. So connect with me on LinkedIn, on my personal page, right? The messenger, and send me a note and say, hey, saw you here with Alex on the podcast and would love to have a conversation with you. I always offer 30-minute complimentary consultation to talk about your job. I usually come up with connections I can give you, ideas I can give you, recommendations, and hopefully you take them.
I love it.
If we want to go farther than that, we go farther than that. But I'll also, you'll see on there, I've got a targeted resume guide that I can give you the link. We can put it in the show notes.
Yep.
And people can sign up for that and get something more out of value, just like we were talking about.
Beautiful. I love it, man. We will link all of that stuff, and I really appreciate you hopping on doing this today. This was fun.
Yeah, thank you. Great to meet you.
Yeah.
And Ohio's a neat area. I lived there for a year in Dayton.
Yeah, maybe
getting my master's.
Maybe we'll see the Buckeyes play Wisconsin someday.
Yeah, they're not doing it this year, but they are doing it soon.
Yep, they're coming around
every couple of years. Yeah, talk about the Big Ten. Interesting. 18 schools now.
Yep. All right, Don. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Appreciate it, Don. That was great.
Appreciate it. Hey, I wanted to mention one thing. At the clock on here, 1 minute, 1 hour, 1 minute and 15 seconds. It kind of caught a hitch, and it's the word you said was repeated like 5 times.
Oh, okay.
And then it kicked off. So just as a point, you want to look at that.
I'll have my editor check on that. You said it was 1 hour, 1 minute.
1 hour, 1 minute, 15 seconds. There's probably just a couple seconds after that, but it's right in it. If you look at the next 10 seconds, it's in there.
Every once in a while, it'll do that on one side or the other, and then the recording will be just fine. But I will definitely check on that. Appreciate that.
Yeah, because StreamYard may take care of all that. It may have just been a buffer and catching up.
I'm actually trying to figure out an alternative to StreamYard. I used Riverside, which I like more, but Riverside crashes every single time that I use it. Every single time, like without fail. I don't know. It's just like something with my computer. I've tried everything on it, and I like their interface better, and they have better like exporting tools, but it just does not work on my computer. So it's like super frustrating because we'll start the podcast and then you'll give this, long, great, 5-minute intro, and then it'll crash. And I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. We got to do all that again. I did that like 2-3 times on, I think, last Thursday. And I just felt so bad with my guest. I was just like, God, so sorry. And she's like, it's fine. It's fine. And I'm like, I know it's not my fault, but it's still like not great. So.
Oh yeah, I had somebody who forgot to hit the record button.
I've never done that one, but me and my editor, we do the 3-camera setup when we do it in person. We just got going on that, and we love it. I mean, it looks great. We're really excited about it. The second one that we did, we recorded the whole episode, and he's like, okay, so I got a problem. I was like, oh boy, what do you got? And he's like, audio is great. Unfortunately, I don't think I got any video. I was like, what? What do you mean? Wow. He's like, I don't know. Like something weird happened with the video, and all I have is like this black screen. And I was like, huh. So like, what do you think that was? He's like, I'm not sure, all I know is that I got a black screen, but this button right here, FTB, is lit up. And I was like, FTB? I was like, I think that means fade to black. So
Oh,
whenever you watch like a commercial and then they just fade out, FTB button, fade to black. The whole thing was recorded in fade to black. I was like, but it is what it is.
At least he came up to you and owned up to it. We did in the nonprofit I was with, we did a interview with a former sergeant major of the Army. I mean, this is the top enlisted guy in the Army. Great interview. And we were weeks later, and I'm like, we've been advertising it. We need to post this. We need to use it for different things. What's the status of it downloading? Oh, it's still downloading. Nothing takes 3 or 4 weeks, 5 weeks to download. I mean, what's going on? Finally, he was like, I forgot to hit the record button. So just own it, damn it.
Yeah.
Why? So it was one of the things that caused me, a number of those same things that caused me finally to say, we're done.
Yeah.
If you can't own up to it and be accountable, then we have a core value problem.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm gonna hang out. I'm gonna record an outro, but I appreciate you, Don. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Look forward to talking more. Let me know when do you think it'll be out?
A couple of weeks. We're doing 3 episodes every 2 weeks, and we probably got like, I don't know, we probably got like 9 or 10 in the hopper.
Okay.
So in the radius of like 4 or 5 weeks.
Okay, so you'll send me an email when you
Yep, and I'll tag you on everything on all the various channels and LinkedIn and such.
Great. Thanks so much.
Appreciate
Good luck,
it, brother.
Thanks for doing what you're doing.
No,
both in the job and employing people. Are you getting veterans in there?
We have some. Yeah.
Okay.
At least 1 or 2. We aren't making like a super conscious effort, but not to say I have any problem doing so, but we aren't like specifically recruiting from the veteran population.
One thing I'm going to start doing is trying to help companies find and hire and retain military spouses, veterans.
Yeah.
So maybe we can talk about that sometime.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
All right.
Appreciate you.
God bless. Take care.
Talk soon.